Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for the first genuine lecture on the Organon, first lecture of this month, this is M1T1, first month, first theoretical lecture. You won't believe it, but today it's warm, even hot and sunny in Geneva. I hope that it's the same for you, but this is not the usual weather we get here. So today you will feel almost ready to find me in short sleeves. It's going to happen soon. So let's start, Lionel. If you want to go to the slides, I will be ready. Thanks. Okay, we go. So we're going to start today the most important part maybe of the Organon, because if you don't lay down correct foundations, the whole building will crumble, and you will finally end up being completely disgusted by homeopathy. You will try to find, different theories, different subsystems, and of course this doesn't work. So it's more than important to clearly understand all the general principles. The Organon is divided into different sections, and the very first one we're going to study now is the part of the Organon from the chapter 1, or if you prefer aphorism 1, to aphorism 70. And believe me, once you're going to understand that, you will be already very good practitioners of homeopathy, because the basis will be there, and then it will be easy to build upon them. So don't forget, if you are connected on Skype, you can call us. This is the Skype address, Planete-Homeo. Easy. You will call at the end of the lecture if you need to ask any questions. I know you are a bit shy, and especially I'm thinking about my friends in Turkey, in Istanbul. Please don't hesitate to call. Okay, let's go. First slide. Thanks. It's my turn to make the slide. So before reading even the first aphorism, I would like to ask, and I would like you to ask to yourself the following questions. First, what is the purpose of your practice? You are treating people. Okay, then what is your purpose? And then what should be the purpose of a physician? This is a very deep question, and you will be very surprised if you ask that to classical doctors, how often they won't have even the beginning of an answer to that. Second point, what curing means in general, and what especially curing means to you. This is very important, again, because what defines a cure, what is not a cure, despite the symptoms are no longer present, okay, but is the patient cured? What do we call cured? And why, by the way, the word curing in medicine has been banned? There is certainly a reason for that. Third point, what should be the position, the role, and even the task of a physician? This is so important and so often completely overlooked. Nobody will ask such questions in any medical university, of course, and certainly not in any school in general. So this is the very first basic points to ask to yourself in order to become a correct homeopathician. And if we go deeper into the questioning, what is a disease state? What is a disease state? What does it mean? What's the disease? Can we understand the disease? Or can we see only the result of the disease? Do we see parts really diseased, or is the disease completely general and just fixing onto the parts? This is a very deep question again. So where and when does the disease start? So important questions again. And once for all, you will see that in classical studies, you won't have any answers to that. So next and last question about that, where is disease located? This is so astonishing, of course, because such questions are never asked in classical studies. And then, last questions. In what sense does homeopathy can ask metaphysical questions? And again, what are the pitfalls? Because, of course, homeopathy is medicine. And if you look at certain people, you really ask questions. Are they still physicians? What the hell are they doing? Are they only asking metaphysical questions? Do they really believe that homeopathy is a kind of spirituality? Of course it is not. And all these questions will be addressed in the first aphorism of the Organon. So you see how deep it is, how important it's going to be to really understand where, in what place do we have to start. This is over important. And of course, my preferred aphorism: the physician's highest and only mission is to restore the sick to health, to cure, as it is termed. Dot. Nothing more, nothing less. This is maybe the deepest possible way to present what is the medical duty. To this, Hahnemann will add a few notes, and as we're going to study that, we'll understand that the notes will refer to what is not homeopathy, what is not medicine. I guess you know the famous paper of Margaret Tyler. She once wrote something, in the title it was How Not to Do It. Sometimes it's very difficult to learn the correct way to do, but how not to do it is much safer, much easier to understand and to study, of course. So this is exactly the plan of Hahnemann. In first he says what is our duty, and then he's going to say what's not our mission. So his mission of the physician, however, is not to construct so-called systems by interweaving empty speculations and hypotheses concerning the internal is essential nature of the vital processes and the mode in which diseases originate in the interior of the organism. This is beautiful. This is completely unknown even nowadays, because still you will find that the classical medicine is still searching the essential nature of the vital processes. This is a mistake. And as would say our beloved Adolf Lippe, this is a fatal mistake, a fatal error, of course, because there will be no answer to that. And we will see in a moment why there will not be any answer to such question. And Hahnemann says, whereon so many physicians have hitherto ambitiously wasted their talents and their time. So this is so important. So many people will keep on wasting their talents, wasting their time, because they are pretty sure that, yes, this time I got it. I'm going to really understand how is life, what is life, how this goes. This is a mistake. So we're going to see how deep here is the questioning and the warning of Samuel Hahnemann. What it's not, again, it's the next note, nor it is to attempt to give countless explanations regarding the phenomena and diseases and their approximate cause. And once again, look at the medicine. I mean, again, when I say medicine, of course, it's the classical medicine. They spend all that time telling, explaining, drawing beautiful drawings, you know, to explain why you have such a pain. This is, you know, that cell connected to this one. And because of that, you are suffering, my poor guy. Okay. So despite these beautiful drawings, we'll see at the end that the patients are always suffering. There is no change at all. So what's wrong? Because they are again giving countless explanations, blah, 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 blah. Why and those proximate cause will ever remain concealed. I'm sorry, but you have once for all to understand that you are not God. Once you understood that, you're going to make good and very rapid progresses, believe me. And of course, all this is wrapped into unintelligible words and in an inflated, abstract mode of expression, which will sound certainly very learned in order to astonish the ignorant. Whilst, will recall us Hahnemann, sick humanity sighs in vain for aid. And you have to think about that, because this is plainly the fact that as physicians, as homeopathic practitioners, we would say that we are really in the trenches. I mean that in front of us, we just have suffering people. And what's the goal? The goal is to find a solution to that suffering. The goal is to find a way, a safe way, a scientific way to say, okay, we have the means to stop that suffering. That's it. So the most surprising part of homeopathy, a French physician was used to say that homeopathy is the indirect etiological method. Because of course we are acting in a very deep level, we are able to cure people, but we are not able to give any explanations. But the important point is that we are able to use the rules and to recognize that there are rules and principles to treat people. This is the most important, of course. After all, when you use any electrical apparatus, nobody, I guess, has just an idea of what an electron can look like. We don't mind that. The fact is, we press the button, it works. It's the same about homeopathy. At some point, you will have to say, okay, I cannot understand biology, life is beyond the reach of human beings, the way it has been created, what's life, we cannot answer those questions, but there are rules, and thanks to the rules, we're going to be able to treat people. That's it. And what says Hahnemann again? Of such learned reveries. I like the word, of course, because it's directly the French word rêverie, to which the name of theoretic medicine is given. Because you had, even in Hahnemann times, professional people who would speak about only theoretic medicine. Can you imagine? They were just building, air castles and speaking about medicine, what it could be, how it should act, and all this blah blah. The people were paid to speak that in front of the students. What a shame. And still nowadays, it's the same story, because every time you're going to give any drug, any classical drug will be, I would say, justified on a so-called, physiopathological theory explaining why it works. But nobody, in general, has the single beginning of the idea of how it works, why it works. Nobody knows. But the important point is to sell it. That's it. This is what classical medicine is, unfortunately, for all the people. And for which, says Hahnemann, professorships are instituted. Okay, we have had quite enough. This is so important. We have enough of this. We want to get rid of this. It's enough. And it is now high time that all who call themselves physicians should at length cease to deceive suffering mankind with mere talk and begin now instead, for once, to act. That is really to help and to cure. So this is so nicely written. You see, it's a kind of mirror. At the end of the first note, you will learn that sick humanity is sighing in vain for aid, and now practical answer. That is, we need really to help and we need to cure people. And here we are. We're going to start here a long commenting of all the aphorisms. And you have to see this first aphorism, you really, as you can see them maybe in Tolkien, because I guess all of you have seen now the movie or read the book, of course, no doubt about it. And you have to imagine the first aphorism like a large portal. Because this has been long pondered by Hahnemann. Believe me, Hahnemann is not a beginner, and Hahnemann will all the time surprise you because every time you're going to read the Organon, you're going to reach a higher level of understanding, and you're going to have a new level of understanding. So Hahnemann says that. Why? Because the first aphorism defines clearly the spirits, the trend of thoughts you should have if you want really to become a homeopath. So if you have the requisite mindset and the correct mental attitude, the gates will open wide, and then you will be able to treat people, because you're going to be able to understand, to learn, and in one word, to get the correct humility, the correct pattern to find the remedies, to find enough energy to learn of this. Otherwise, you're doomed, and really, you will not be able to enter homeopathy, and forever you will remain in the limbo at the entrance. Imagine homeopathy as a multi-dimensional problem. I love the dimension problem because maybe you know, or maybe you don't, but once, long time ago, I was so interested in astrophysics that almost I became one of them. And finally, you know, as a bad boy, I ended into medicine. It was much funny, you know, to treat people. And the multidimensional aspects will be more than once a subject that I'm going to teach, because we will see that certainly the vital force itself has something to do with some mathematical models we're going to discuss later, of course, later on. And already imagine that you can explore a multi-dimensional object only in one dimension, maybe 2, 3, and of course you can imagine if it's correct that you need all your life to understand and to explore all the rest of the dimensions. So you will find many people who have learned quite a bit of homeopathy. Maybe they have 1, 2, or 3 dimensions. This is correct already, of course, but you need to keep working in order to understand the rest of the dimensions. Otherwise, you're going to stay again in front of the portal and you won't get into the subject. So this is again very important, and especially if you compare the current state of homeopathy to with the achievements of yore, if you compare that to what did Hahnemann, Lippe, Hering, all the great guys, you just can't imagine. Why were they so great doctors? Because they were possessing this multidimensional aspect, I would say, of homeopathy. They will possess at least all the aphorisms of the Organon. They will understand that, and nowadays, for example, the Indian doctors are quite competent in learning and teaching the Organon. It's a shame that in Europe, for example, the Organon is not studied. Maybe sometimes you will find in some schools people quoting it, of course, but usually they don't have time. Then the question is, God, do you have to teach something better than the Organon? Yes. If it's the case, then we should expect beautiful results. And unfortunately, it's not the case. So once again, we have to come back and to set correctly homeopathy and medicine upon the firm Organon. That's it. So for this time, just once, I'm going to bend the rules because, you know, I just hate reductionism, and for this time we're going to go reductionist. So it's important and to tackle the issue I will use the same reductionist approach of conventional medicine that I hate so much. So I'm going to cut all the words apart, and for this time we're going to comment every word of the aphorism, and then we will see how the blend of the words together will give you the taste, I hope, of the first aphorism. And there is no doubt that if you come back 1 year later and see this video again, you're going to be surprised to find new meanings to the Organon. This is the endless study of the Organon. You will spend your whole life reading, understanding, and going higher. I'm just here to help you on the beginning of the path, of course. The first word, mission, is the same as vocation. Mission, vocation, from the Latin etymology vocare. Vocare means it's almost religious. In different translations, we would say that Hahnemann used the words job, but job maybe is a bit, you know, a kind of people that are ready to make handiwork, and it's not maybe exactly the meaning of Hahnemann here. So mission is correct, and certainly vocation is almost better. So the words as a special meaning in Latin words, it has the meaning of being summoned by God. So the correct definition is this one. It's an inclination, as if in response to a summons, to undertake a certain kind of work, especially a religious career, a calling. So we can see there are three different words: vocation, calling, and mission. So you imagine that Hahnemann uses more than a powerful word to refer to the medical approach. So this is really interesting. Of course, this is no coincidence. And once again, as these very first words used in the Organon will define the issue, you will see in your own practice, in your own experience, only people who are really, I would say, burned internally, consumed by homeopathy, will manage to succeed in homeopathy. Those who have just, you know, glimpsed, even partially, the immense extent of this science will again stay in front of the portal. They will not be able to go beyond the portal. And once again, you see how important is that idea of mission, calling, vocation, and you know now a Latin word. This is very good for you. We have to learn general things like that. So for this time I have to say sorry for the atheists, of course, because in my practice you will notice, and I guess it will be the same around you, that if you don't have this kind of, I would dare to say, this kind of faith, you are, you know, you are surfing really on a special wave, and if you don't have that faith to undertake all this work, and if you don't burn internally because you understand that you are qualified for a mission, you won't become a correct homeopath. You will use homeopathy, you know, like people giving one day little drops, little white pellets the next day, and of course you will remain once again in front of my famous portal. You will not go beyond the portal. So okay, I've been started enough by lots of materialist people that I have unfortunately known universities, in the hospitals. You know, it's so easy because under a microscope you can see some changes. So it's beautiful. We can act on changes. You have even to find molecules, and you can deal with molecules. This is so beautiful. But once again, this is the trick, because what you see, it's exactly not what you get, as they say in the computers. And what you see is the result of the disease. And if you just, you know, think 1 minute, you will understand that the change that you are able to see is certainly not the disease, in fact, but it is the result of the disease. I will refer to the first question I asked in the beginning of this lecture. And so, as Hahnemann says, there is a kind of a divine dimension to that is really transcending the individual. And really, you have to understand that if you are not all the time astonished, you have to be like a child, discovering something all the time new, something that really you don't understand, but you see. You are obliged to say, okay, it's working beautifully. I have no answer, but the fact is that it's working. That's all we ask to you today. And then you become, you know, a genuine healer, because like in the early periods of the human story, you will know that there was no great difference between priests and the healers. And once again, you're going to be a genuine healer. And there is, of course, that almost spiritual dimension. But once again, the founder will warn us against the fact that we have no special spiritual approach. We have no metaphysics in homeopathy. And once again, it's just medicine. And so to become a genuine healer, we have to feel that internal fire burning us, and that calling to that says, okay, I have one duty, I have one mission, it's to cure sick people. And you know, in homeopathy, unfortunately, we have seen lots, really lots of mystical drifts, and this is of course a mistake. And when I say a mistake, it's a complete mistake, and once again a fatal error. Of course, there is no mystical thing into the whole homeopathy. And of course, you have to guard yourself against any pseudo-religious or philosophical mystical drifting, you know, that that kind of sulfuric behavior. You know, they spend that time philosophing all the time about subjects and blah blah, all these things. This is all confusions. And Hahnemann, of course, doesn't want any potential confusions. And so from the very beginning of the whole work, of the whole masterwork, of course, he will set us straight right from the beginning. Don't make any theories. Don't dwell on metaphysical subjects that you will eventually have no answers. Just try to restore health. That's it. Thanks, Lionel. If you can make it a bit larger, it will help us. Yeah. Good. Thanks. We have the super chief behind me, or in front of me, if you prefer, behind the wall. Is making wonders. Thanks. So we have plenty of right to do whatever you want besides medicine. Of course, you have plenty the right to become and even to be a philosopher, researcher, even religious people, of course, whatever. But as physicians, we are dealing upon the totality. What is the totality? Because believe me, you're going to hear me speaking about totality all the time. Because totality, the phenomenon of sickness, if you prefer, deals with body and soul all together. Of course, and we will see that in the aphorism 15, we make theoretical difference between matter, what you can see, if you prefer, and dynamic influences, body and self. And in fact, it's a complete delusion to separate those things. If you know that light is a complex phenomenon, there is a little particle, the photon, and there is the electromagnetic wave associated to it. So when the light wants to be a wave, it is a wave. You can perfectly prove it's a wave, as Newton did, by the way. And if you don't want to prove it's a wave, it will react as exactly a particle, and you will see particles. So there is a kind of duality, but once again, this duality is something that we cannot understand in the human eyes. This is something like that we have to observe in the human body. So there is the body, there is the cell, and we're dealing with that totality. That's it. We don't try to understand. We are not needing any religious explanations. We don't need any metaphysical explanations, because this is beyond the scope of medicine. So you have plenty of right, and I would say, of course, it's a very good thing to study philosophy, but please don't do that with medicine. You don't have to mix medicine and anything else. Once again, we are here to cure people, to heal people, and this is the only way to understand that. So you see how dense is the aphorism 1, because we are still dealing with it and we have not finished yet. Ah, good. So it is a superlative because it's the highest, because you understand that there is the requisite exigency here that Hahnemann is telling us. We have to understand that there is no higher goal in life than treating suffering people. If we don't understand that, once again, we will not have the energy to understand what's said in the Organon, and we will certainly not have the patience and the will to continue studying homeopathy. This is so important. So what he says, the highest and the only, gives a kind of, vertical thing coming from maybe the sky, the highest, and then the only, and it will be obvious for all of you that this is the idea of transcendence. So this is why homeopathy is so threatening to the interests that are ruling the world today, because of course you will all the time find any sectarian deviations that really have little to do with homeopathy. You will find people will explain that you will need to learn whatever famous religious philosopher to understand what is homeopathy, but I'm sorry, it is completely a mistake. And homeopathy is not like another sheep in the barn, of course. It has really a tremendous capacity, and this is the point. This is the danger, I would say, of homeopathy. It's very easy to become metaphysical. It's more difficult to become genuine homeopath, because you have to keep your ground, your feet on the ground. I mean, you have to deal with the suffering patients. And once again, it's going to be difficult for you if you are listening to me for the first time and maybe you did not study homeopathy yet, because you will have to change, to make that shifting of paradigm And the shift of paradigm is something very difficult to do. Because paradigm, by definition, a paradigm is something that you are not questioning anymore. You suppose this is right. For example, once for all, you say the day has 24 hours. Beautiful. This is a paradigm, for example. But you know this is false. This is completely true. Go up north, for example. Go even in the South or North Pole, and you will discover what I'm meaning now. The day can be something totally different and has no more 24 hours a day. And you see how difficult it's. That shift of paradigm is the key to homeopathy, the key to really understand what is homeopathy. I see somebody is trying to call us. We'll see that later on. You follow? And so it's difficult to say, but it's the new breath of the inner face. I cannot say in better words, because it's a kind of wind. When we say anima, in the Latin sense, it's the Greek name pneuma. Pneuma means breath. It means, you know, you take something mineral that is not living, and you make something alive. You make, mesdames. Hello. Are you speaking? On est en plein cours. We are in the English lecture. I guess some of my students are calling me because they wanted to hear some explanations about whatever. What are they telling me? We're going to make a kind of a pause. Okay, it's the Canadian girls, huh? They are in Canada, of course. It's not quite the same time, though, so they are calling a bit in advance. Yeah, it's a bit early. It's in 1 hour, girls. Okay, so we can go back to the lecture, and I will take my breath once again. Speaking of pneuma, our dear pneuma in the Greek word. Yes, here we are again. To make you understand that it's a matter of new breath. This is coming from the superlative, the highest and the only. So you see that motion, something coming from upwards to you. This is very deep, again, in the understanding of the aphorism. So the physician is the one who is really motivated by this state of mind, who will enjoy that special altitude. You could say attitude if you prefer, but altitude is even better. That will silence his ego, because ego cannot go with medicine. And it's really a pity to see how many great professors are also very great egos, and that is a mistake once again, because you won't go beyond my famous portal. The ego is something that will prevent you from becoming a correct homeopath, because you won't have that pneuma, that Greek pneuma, that breath coming into yourself and giving birth to what is really a homeopath. So we are needing to understand, and when I'm using the word understanding, it's not correct. I would say we need to perceive, as it will be the verb used so often by Hahnemann. We'll perceive that we have a goal that will transcend what we are. We are obeying to something higher. This is the key to homeopathy. And here we have the parable of the stonecutters. I guess you know it, but it's something so classical, I even don't dare maybe to recall that to you, but I love it so much. And you will see that so often you will find the people exactly telling what happens in that story. You will see quite often people behaving in the way it's described in this wonderful parable. So let's go. So you have the project manager of a given cathedral, whatever what it be, and the guy is just inspecting the work of the stonecutter. So he will find three of them and will ask to the first one, "What are you doing?" And they say, the guy says, a little disconcerted by the question, he says, "Well, look, I'm cutting a stone." Okay, and the manager goes a bit further and he will address another guy working exactly the same way and then asking the same question. And then he gets this new answer. He says, "I'm making a living, this is a job, and I will need that job to sustain my family." Ah, different response, different answer. And finally, a third one, busy, of course, doing exactly the same thing than the others, will give a new answer. "What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm building a cathedral." And this is something so important for you to understand, because you will find a vast majority of people in medicine doing exactly what does the first category here of stonecutters. They just study, they learn very nicely what they are supposed to learn. They are a bit trained, I would say, like you could train animals. It's a matter of reflex, You have a symptom, they know perfectly what drug to give to stop the symptom. Beautiful. And that kind of people, you could call them the unconsciously blind, because they are not even conscious of being blind. They just know that they know. And, that's the kind of handyman I wrote with a quick and practiced hand. So you will find heaps of pseudo-scientists, and for whom science will rhyme with just piling up knowledge. Beautiful, okay. But they just do not have that famous pneuma, that breast that gives life, to that heap of knowledge. Otherwise, it's just information, as would say Einstein. This information is not useful. It hasn't transformed you. You will remain the same. You will be a kind of inflated ego because of that science that you have been piling up beautifully. But then there is no chance to become a genuine homeopath. And you will see that quite often these people, if they have to face a phenomenon that they cannot explain, we'll see, for example, the way we can make testings, clinical testings of doses, and the effects, the phenomenon is so obvious that they would even then prefer to say it doesn't exist. So this is the kind of people that are the very unfortunate one, because they are completely doomed into that materialistic world and unable to really be scientific. They just are able to learn knowledge, to build up knowledge, but they have no genuine scientific attitude, and certainly not the correct frame set to become a correct homeopath. This is it. So we will see, this question is the famous difference between what the French say Cartesian thinking. René Descartes, of course, is one of the most famous French philosophers, and he put some beautiful things, and at the same time, of course, he wrote completely stupid things too. But for the moment being, we're going to make the difference between Cartesian thinking and scholastics way of making so-called knowledge but in fact it is no more knowledge, it's just a matter of inflating ego, discussing endlessly on the same subjects without being able to really make what René Descartes is asking us. What does he say? He says the thinking subject is in the center of the scene. I'm trying to translate exactly from the French so you understand even better. What does he say? He says in substance that you certainly don't have to trust anybody else apart you and you alone. It means that in front of anything in life, you have to trust what you are testing yourself and not trust anybody else apart yourself. This is so important. Why? Because you won't have a correct opinion if you don't try and put on test homeopathy yourself. You will be able to discuss, as will do many doctors who have no clue about homeopathy, but they will discuss homeopathy in a very scholastic way. This scholastic way, they have learned that homeopathy is not working. They have learned that homeopathy is just a mere placebo. They have learned blah, 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 blah. But did they just try to open the Organon? Did they ask themselves the questions? Did they just try? So you see the difference between experience and opinions. And can you imagine that all this is in the first aphorism? So hindsight on their practices, you see, is next to nil. Really, they have nothing to say because, once again, they do not study homeopathy. So what are they talking about? They're just speaking prejudice and opinions, nothing else. So this is why it's so difficult to get into that Cartesian thinking subject. So if you want to become a homeopath, you're going to become a Cartesian thinking subject. You will have to put that on test. You will have to try yourself. You will have to do that, and to say, okay, let's go. We have to understand, I have to deal with the suffering of people. We have to touch, to feel, to examine our patients, and then to cure them. Otherwise, it's too easy to be on a desk, computing beautiful statistics, and you are just dealing with abstractions and not anymore with any reality. And once again, the founder says, okay, try. You have to stop being a scholastic. You have to make and to build your own opinion. This is the key. I have a little problem with my titles. I don't know what happened. But what we have to say, no, it's not your fault, Lionel, I'm sorry, it's my own fault, but they will be able to read, I guess. So I just want to say now that, of course, those of you who have made that famous medicine, as we say in French, faire la médecine, it's the same expression when we say faire la guerre, it's something terrific. You go, you start, and you're gonna stay there 8 to 10 years. At the end, you will find almost nobody with a critical mind. And students are really subjected to a completely oppressive rhythm that will only prize those who are able to learn the most in the shortest time. This, of course, is the complete opposite to the scientific mind. So most of them, they will just get accustomed to passively, learn the proposed knowledge, and very rarely, very seldom, they will ever call it into question. And once again, the founder says, okay, call everything into question. Don't even believe me. Don't even believe Handman. Please, try. You have to try yourself. It's just the only way to understand and to make a correct experience. Because experience is not an opinion. We have to get rid of every opinion. We have to make experience and to find the way ourselves. Otherwise, you are doomed. Once again, I repeat, you won't be able to understand correctly what is homeopathy. You will not be able to get into it. Most of them do that because, as I'm writing that, it's a kind of reaction to anxiety, to even anguish, because it's so nice to understand that what you have learned is the plain truth and there is nothing else beside it. You decide that the whole universe is my studio here, between we have 4 walls, 2 windows, that's it. And I will be the only one specialist able to have the full knowledge of my little universe. You can't do that. That's what they're doing, of course. Discovering homeopathy is something too difficult for them. And we can't understand why. Because this is very reassuring. This is something very, very nice to calm down, because they are not afraid anymore. And we're going to see that classical medicine, in fact, can be called the medicine of fear, because all the time it's a matter of fear. You have to make that treatment because you fear that the patient can sue you, and you can have problems and need lawyers to solve them. And patients, in their turn, want a drug because, like that, they have no more fear that something happens, that they would die, that the child can have fever, or whatever. This is completely crazy. This is the situation in which we are now. And, of course, we have to fight that. So, in one word, I am dealing here with the willingly blind people. And this category is a very, very common category in especially medicine. Because they would say, I'm just, earning my life. Please, don't ask me anything. You will treat them. You will treat members of their families. You will treat relatives. You will cure them, sometimes in a very nice way. And even then, you're going to be surprised because they see the results. They cannot see anything but the results. And then you say, okay, now, guy, you've seen the result. You come with me and you're going to learn homeopathy. And what would they say? No, I'm sorry. It's just a matter of time. I'm too busy. I cannot have enough time to learn homeopathy. And I've seen like that, as I don't need to read it. You will read it yourself, I guess. But I have seen so many doctors like that, and especially this one. And I asked, but come on, you are treating words. You are destroying words. You are focusing on words. Can you imagine 1 second that the immune system is enough, I would say, twisted to allow that word to be on the skin, to remain on the skin, and you are, of course, in front of a general phenomenon that implies that the whole body is sick, and you are treating locally that word. Come on, is that just normal? I don't mind. This is the only answer, because they are not doctors. They are belonging to the second category. They just want to earn their life. And that's it. They have learned a profession, but they're certainly not with the medical mission, that famous vocation, and that famous calling, if we can use those three terms. We are, of course, thousands of light years away. That is not medicine. But these people are exactly the one who will judge us. They would say, oh, those homeopaths, oh, come on, oh, bad people, they're giving just, plain water. Oh, they are just fake doctors, fake people. And in fact, they are the only one, and they are the kind of people who are really favored by the medical studies, because in medicine you just have to learn, and when you are asked to give this, throw this out at the examination, and that's it. This is, once again, a powerful tool in the hands of the classical medicine, because they are making blind people after 8 years, sometimes 12 years of what I would call brainwashing. This is the real danger of medicine. And so this is the fear, as I told you. Most of them would be completely fear-driven. I mean, they understand that there is a huge responsibility dealing with suffering people, and they prefer not to have any fear. Because if they give the correct drug, the one that the law says in front of that disease, you have to give that drug. This is the final ending of the whole system, like the insurance and the government and the labs will make the beautiful system. You have one disease, one therapy, one drug, and that's it. So if you don't give that, it's your fault if anything goes wrong. So it's so difficult. You have the fear of legal sanctions. You have the fear to stand out from the crowd. And again, fear of failure, fear to subject your patient to a risk, of course. And this is a very difficult point to understand if you want to become a correct homeopath, because you will have to go beyond that fear to be able to open the famous portal and to go into the organon. And the more you will master the organon, the more you will be able to understand and to deal with that fear. Because, of course, on the other hand, if you have no fear at all, then stop, there is something wrong. You are dealing with the suffering of people. And if you are not afraid, there is something wrong, believe me. Of course, you have to stand in the middle path. You have to understand that, of course, we can treat people, and then this has to be based upon correct knowledge of homeopathy, otherwise useless. And you will, sometimes make a lucky hit, I would say. Otherwise, you won't be able to treat chronic disease, and certainly not acute ones. So, apart 1 or 2 people a month, you will not be able to become a correct homeopath. We're going to finish with these categories, and we will stop here after almost one hour of lecture. I think it's enough, because I have to fix this. I'm very sorry. I don't know what happened. We have sometimes, some technical issues like that, but it's not a great problem, I guess. It's no big deal. So in this last category, sometimes, and I'm pretty sure, I bet that it's been your experience too, you will find very exceptionally scarce professors who really left their mark on you during these years of study. They gave off that, I think we can use the French, je ne sais quoi, this little something, that human touch, I would say, because they had themselves that medical calling. There were certainly not those kind of scholastic people with statistics, all this blah blah, and so far away from the human suffering. And once again, you see ego, scholastic in one side, humility, and we'll see love even on the other side. So their humanness was evident. And these people were really doctors, were really physicians, because they were at the service of a cause. And now, how many of them? I don't know, but if I remember well, maybe I have seen 12 of them, I would say, in 10 years. So it's not that much, but these people, I will never forget them. No, I will not forgive what the rest did to me. And you have to think about that, humanness, humility, humanness and humility. This is what Hahnemann is asking to be. And so I guess all of you know that famous level of consciousness. Of course, most people are still, and we are all of us, at a certain level for a special knowledge in an unconscious level of ignorance, of course. It's the, I would say, the executor stage. It's so comfortable after all. You don't have to ask any questions. You just execute. Good. Of course, you forget doing this that you are dealing with human suffering, and if you don't ask questions in front of the everyday failure of classical medicine, then I don't know what to say. Second stage is the conscious ignorance. That's the stage of most of you when you start studying homeopathy. You start to discover something completely new, and you say, oh my God, I was so ignorant. And then you're going to start learning. It's the wage learning stage. And then you're going to leave that ignorance stages to get into the knowledge stages. There are two of them. The first is the conscious knowledge. I mean, you are aware that there are other dimensions and certainly probing alternative avenues. You are starting to learn, and it's maybe like when I'm speaking in English, I make some mistakes. I have no time to speak English all the day. So the more lectures I will do, the more fluent I will become in English. And then finally, I will reach, I hope, the fourth level of unconscious knowledge. You won't have to reflect, you won't have to think, you will have completely made that paradigm shift, it's difficult to say to me, and this is not anymore asking any conscious deliberation. You have made a complete change in your mind. So we're going to end the lecture on this level of consciousness. If Lionel can drive me back to the great studio, here I am. Thanks. This is unbelievable. You know, I've been doing this for 2 years now, and I still don't understand how it can work, but here it is. So we have just started to deal with the Organon one, and as you see, there are lots of things to say, but I've done what I wanted to do almost, and it will take, I guess, a second lecture to finish the Organon one. I hope you have enjoyed. I did my very best to be understood. I did my best not to speak too fast, because otherwise I'm getting back to my horrible French accent. So I will do even better, I hope, next time. I've been very pleased to speak to you. I hope it's the same about learning homeopathy. So this is becoming a professor, you know, it's sometimes difficult. And I will see you next week, next Wednesday, same time, 5:30 French time. It's the best time for me. I guess for many of you who are in one side of the planet and the other side of the planet, It's the common middle path. I hope it will please to all of you. See you soon. Thank you.